Ambassador Kim stood in the massive docking bay of the Galactic Council station, staring at what they called humanity's gift. His hands clenched into fists as he looked at the floating pile of junk before him. Rusted metal pieces drifted slowly, in the zero gravity, bumping into each other like garbage in space. The Vorthak delegate walked up beside him, his forearms crossed in what Kim had learned was their version of smugness. The alien's translator box buzzed to life with mechanical precision. "Behold, human, your first warship allocation." The Vorthak's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "We have been most generous." Kim bit back his first response. Around the observation deck, representatives from dozens of alien species watched the scene unfold. Some were chittering among themselves, others making sounds that didn't need translation. They were all laughing at him, at humanity. "This is scrap metal," Kim said, keeping his voice level despite the anger burning in his chest. "Recycled materials," the Vorthak corrected smoothly. "Your species is new to galactic warfare. We thought it best to start you with something manageable." A piece of hull plating the size of a car tumbled past the viewing window. It had more holes in it than Swiss cheese. Kim could see where someone had tried to patch it with what looked like industrial tape. The Zephyrians used that section for target practice, another alien voice chimed in from behind them. "Very effective for training new gunners." More laughter rippled through the crowd. Kim felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he kept watching the debris field. Somewhere in that mess were the remains of at least 6 different ships. He could make out the twisted frame of what might have been a cargo hauler, the melted stub of a mining vessel, and chunks of armor plating that belonged to no design he recognized. "How long do we have to work with this?" Kim asked. "Take all. The time you need," the Vorthak replied. "We understand humans work slowly, no shame in that." Kim activated his communicator without taking his eyes off the scrap pile. "Captain Lee, you need to get up here now." "Problem, Ambassador. Just get up here and see what they think of us." As Kim waited for his captain to arrive, he listened to the aliens behind him discussing humanity like they weren't even there. They talked about humans the way people back on Earth might discuss a new pet. Cute, maybe useful for simple tricks, but not to be taken seriously. One of the hegemony representatives was explaining to his junior staff how primitive human technology remained. Another was betting on how long it would take for the humans to give up and ask for help. The numbers they threw around made Kim's jaw clench tighter. 6 months, some said. Others were more generous and gave humanity a full year before they came crawling back, begging for real ships. Kim smiled grimly as he watched a section of reactor housing drift past the window. The aliens saw junk. They saw failure waiting to happen. They saw a species that would learn its place in the galactic order. They had no idea what humans could do when someone told them something was impossible. "Captain Lee to Docking Bay 7, came the voice over the comm. "On my way down," Kim replied. It was time to see what they were really working with. Chief Engineer Park floated through the debris field in her EVA suit, scanner in one hand and tablet in the other. Her breathing was the only sound in her helmet as she moved from piece to piece, cataloguing what the aliens had dumped on them. "This is interesting," she muttered to herself, running her gloved hand along a section of hull plating. The metal was pitted and scarred, but underneath the damage she could feel something solid, really solid. "Chief, you seeing this power core?" Han's voice crackled through the comm. He was about 50 meters away, wrestling with a cylindrical component that was easily 3 times his size. "This thing's ancient, but look at these energy readings." Park pushed off from the hull section and drifted toward him. The power core was definitely old. The design was at least 20 years behind current alien technology, but as she scanned it with her equipment, her eyebrows went up. "Han, this core is rated for twice the output of anything we've got back home," she said. "The aliens threw it away because it's not efficient by their standards." "Their loss." Han grinned through his helmet visor. "What else we got?" Across the debris field, the rest of Park's team was spread out like scavengers after a feast. These weren't your typical Navy engineers. Most of them had been working civilian jobs before the government called them up for this mission. Choi had been fixing cars in Seoul. Min had been welding oil rigs in the Yellow Sea. Jay had been building bridges in Busan. "Chief, you need to see this," Choi's voice came over the comm. She was examining what looked like the twisted remains of a cargo hauler. "This armor plating isn't standard military grade. It's mining equipment." Park jetted over to where Choi was working. The younger woman had her scanner pressed against a section of metal that looked like it had been through hell and back. "Mining equipment?" Park asked. "Yeah, look at these readings. This stuff is designed to handle asteroid impacts, solar radiation, extreme temperature changes. It's not pretty, but it's tough as nails." Park felt a smile spreading across her face. She pulled up her tablet and started sketching. "Girls and boys, gather around. I want to show you something." The team slowly converged on her position, their magnetic boots clanking against the makeshift platform they'd set up. Park turned her tablet screen so everyone could see her rough design. "The aliens see garbage," she said, gesturing at the debris around them. "They see outdated junk that doesn't meet their fancy standards. You know what I see?" She pointed at different sections of her sketch. "Raw materials. That power core Han found? We'll modify it to run 20% over manufacturer specs. That mining armor Choi discovered? We'll layer it over a framework that can take punishment no alien ship was built to handle." "That's not how starship engineering works," Min said, but he was grinning as he said it. "Exactly," Park replied. "We're not building an alien starship. We're building something they've never seen before. Something that works the human way." Captain Lee's voice suddenly filled their comms. "Engineering team, report to the construction bay. We've got work to do." Park looked around at her team. These people had built their careers making impossible things work with whatever materials they could find. Now they had the biggest salvage job in human history. "Time to get dirty," she announced. Captain Lee stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table, his coffee growing cold in his hands. Park's design rotated slowly in the blue light, and every angle made him more convinced. His chief engineer had lost her mind. "This looks like someone took 3 different ships and crashed them together," Lee said finally. 4 ships, actually," Park replied, pulling up different sections of the blueprint. "See this front section? That's from the old hegemony freighter. The middle part uses the mining vessel's framework. The rear section combines parts from 2 different military escorts." Lee walked around the hologram, studying it from every angle. The ship had no symmetry whatsoever. One side was heavier than the other. The weapons weren't evenly distributed. The engine placement looked like an afterthought. "Park, this thing shouldn't be able to fly in a straight line," he said. "Who says we want to fly in a straight line?" Park grinned. "Look, Captain, alien ships are built like works of art. Perfect balance, elegant curves, everything in its proper place. That makes them predictable." She manipulated the hologram to highlight different systems. "Our ship is going to be a nightmare for their targeting computers. The weight distribution is so random that their systems won't be able to calculate our movement patterns." Commander Yoon, Lee's second-in-command, leaned forward in his chair. "What about our own navigation systems? How do we control something this unbalanced?" "Manual control," Park said simply. "We fly it like a fighter pilot, not like a computer program." Lee felt a headache coming on. "The power systems alone should cause a cascade failure. You're routing energy through salvaged components that were never meant to work together." "That's where human engineering comes in," Park replied. She pulled up another section of the blueprint. "See these junction boxes? I'm installing manual overrides at every connection point. If something overloads, we shut it down and reroute power through backup systems." "How many backup systems?" Yoon asked. "All of them," Park said. "Captain, alien ships are built to work perfectly or not at all. One major hit, and their whole system shuts down for safety. Our ship is built to keep fighting even when half of it is broken." Lee studied the weapons placement. Railguns were mounted on arms that stuck out from the main hull like broken bones. Energy cannons were clustered in groups that made no tactical sense. Missile launchers were scattered across the surface like acne. "The weapons layout is completely random," he observed. "Exactly. When we fire, the aliens won't know where the shots are coming from. Their defensive systems are designed to track conventional weapon placements. This will confuse the hell out of them." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council's inspection team arrived for their scheduled review. Lee watched from the observation deck as the aliens studied Park's blueprints. Their reaction was everything he'd hoped for. The lead inspector, a tall Zephyrian with silver scales, kept shaking his head as he scrolled through the design files. His translator was working overtime as he spoke rapidly with his team. "Captain, Lee," the inspector finally said, his voice tight with concern. "These modifications violate 17 different safety protocols. The power distribution alone should result in immediate system failure." "We've run the calculations," Lee replied calmly. "Everything checks out. By human standards, perhaps, but galactic safety requirements clearly state that—" "We're building this to human specifications," Lee interrupted. "Our ship, our rules." The inspector's scales rippled with what Lee had learned was equivalent to a frustrated sigh. "This design is impossible. It cannot work." Lee smiled. "That's what makes it perfect." The construction bay never slept. Sparks flew constantly as welders worked around the clock, their torches casting dancing shadows on the walls. The sound of hammers on metal rang out like a drumbeat that echoed through the entire station. Park wiped sweat from her forehead as she watched her team transform the pile of alien junk into something that actually looked like a ship. It was ugly as sin, but it was theirs. "Chief, we've got a problem with the port side armor," Choi called out from her position 50 feet up, on the scaffolding. She was hanging upside down trying to weld a section of mining plate to the ship's framework. "This piece doesn't want to fit." "Make it fit," Park shouted back. "Use the big hammer if you have to." The aliens watching from their observation booth looked horrified as Choi grabbed a sledgehammer and started beating the armor plate into submission. Their translator boxes were buzzing constantly as they complained to each other about primitive techniques and dangerous practices. Han was working on the power core, surrounded by cables and conduits that looked like electronic spaghetti. The original alien design called for clean, sealed connections. Han had thrown that manual out the airlock and was hardwiring everything with thick copper cables. "This is never going to pass inspection," Min said, looking at Han's work. "Those connections are completely exposed." "Good," Han replied, not looking up from his soldering. "When something breaks, I want to be able to fix it with a screwdriver instead of calling tech support." Lieutenant Song was having her own battles with the weapons systems. The targeting computers from 3 different alien species were refusing to talk to each other. Every time she tried to sync them up, they crashed. "The hegemony system keeps trying to override the Vorthak targeting matrix," she explained to Park. "They're designed to be the primary system, but so is the Zephyrian computer." "Then don't sync them," Park said. "Run them separately. Manual. Targeting for each weapon system." Song looked at her like she'd suggested flying the ship backwards. "Manual targeting? Chief, that's insane. No one's done manual targeting in 50 years. "Then we'll be the first," Park replied. "Our gunners will aim by eye and instinct. Let's see how the aliens handle that." The work went on day and night. The human crew took shifts, but the ship never stopped growing. Every day it looked less like a collection of spare parts and more like something that might actually fight. Ambassador Kim visited the construction bay regularly, usually followed by groups of alien observers who came to see the human experiment. Their reactions ranged from fascination to outright horror. "They're using industrial adhesive to seal the hull joints," one Zephyrian engineer reported to his superior. "Not proper molecular bonding, industrial adhesive." "It works," Kim replied when the complaint was translated for him. "Sometimes the Icho's simple solution is the best solution." The aliens couldn't understand how humans could work with such chaos. There was no master computer controlling the construction, no central AI managing the workflow. Just people talking to each other, solving problems as they came up, and building something that shouldn't exist. By month 4, even the alien observers had to admit the ship was taking shape. It looked like a mechanical monster, all angles and armor plating, bristling with weapons that stuck out in every direction. "It's hideous," the Vorthak inspector commented during his weekly visit. Park grinned as she ran her hand along the hull. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and this baby is beautiful to me." The HSS Defiance hung in space like a mechanical nightmare, all sharp angles and welded scars catching the light from the nearby star. Captain Lee sat in his command chair, running his hands over controls that had been cobbled together from 6 different alien species technology. All systems. Green, Captain, Park reported from the engineering station. Her voice carried over the intercom from deep in the ship's belly, where she was literally sitting next to the fusion reactor with a wrench in her hand. Green might be too strong a word, Navigator Yoon muttered, staring at his console. Half. The readings were in alien languages he couldn't read, and the other half were showing numbers that made no sense. More like yellow with hints of impending doom. Lee grinned despite himself. Around them, a dozen alien observation ships maintained what they probably thought was a safe distance. Their crews were about to see what human engineering could accomplish when someone told them it was impossible. Helm, take us forward. Nice and easy, Lee ordered. The ship lurched forward like a drunk elephant, taking its first steps, the artificial. Gravity hiccuped, making everyone grab their armrests. From somewhere deep in the ship came a grinding noise that sounded like two pieces of metal having an argument. That's normal, Park's voice crackled over the comm. The port engine is running a little rough, but she'll smooth out once we get moving. The Galactic Council's lead observer, a nervous hegemony official named Thrix, was practically vibrating, with anxiety on the main view screen. Captain Lee, we're reading massive power fluctuations across your entire ship. Perhaps we should abort this test. Negative, Control, Lee replied. We're just getting started. Helm, increase speed to half impulse. What happened next made every alien observer reach for their emergency beacons. The Defiance shot forward like it had been kicked by an angry god. The acceleration pressed everyone back into their seats, with a force that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Speed is 3.2 times normal impulse, Yoon reported, his voice strained against the G-forces. Hull integrity is holding at 127% of projected tolerance. The alien ships were frantically backing away as the human vessel blazed past them. Their perfectly balanced, elegantly designed ships couldn't match the raw power that the humans had squeezed out of their cobbled-together monster. Sir, the Vorthak observer is demanding we slow down immediately, Communications Officer Shin reported. He says we're operating outside safe parameters. Tell him we'll be done when we're done, Lee replied. All stop. Prepare for weapons test. The ship came to a halt with all the grace of a brick hitting a wall. The artificial gravity went out for a full 3 seconds, sending everyone floating before slamming them back into their seats. Target asteroid locked, reported Tactical Officer Bayek. All weapons ready. Fire when ready. The first railgun shot lit up space like a miniature sun. The electromagnetic pulse from the discharge knocked out half the monitoring equipment on the nearby alien ships. The asteroid they'd been aiming at simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a tungsten slug moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The second shot was even more impressive, punching a hole clean through a second asteroid, before continuing on into deep space. By the third shot, the alien observation ships were fleeing to what they hoped was a safer distance. Sir, Shin said, trying to keep the amazement out of his voice, the Galactic Council is ordering us to return to port immediately. Lee leaned, back in his command chair, watching the debris from their target practice drift away into space. Tell them we're still running diagnostics. This might take a while. The distress signal reached the Defiance while they were running routine patrols near the outer colonies. Captain Lee was drinking his morning coffee when Communications Officer Shin's voice cut through the bridge's usual quiet hum. Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Kepler 442 system. Human colony ships under attack. Lee set down his mug and moved to the tactical display. The hologram showed 3 red dots circling a cluster of blue civilian vessels, like sharks around wounded prey. What are we looking at? Korthak raiders, sir, 3 heavy cruisers and what looks like a destroyer. They've got our people pinned against the planet's gravity well. Lee felt his jaw clench. The Korthak were professional pirates who had been raiding the Outer Rim for decades. They used stolen military equipment and had no qualms about targeting civilian vessels. Most species paid them tribute rather than fight. How long to intercept? Lee asked. Navigator Yoon was already plotting the course. 47 minutes at maximum burn, Captain. Do it, and send a message to the colony ships. Tell them the cavalry is coming. 47 minutes later, the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace like an angry meteor. The scene before them made Lee's blood boil. 2 human transport ships were drifting dead in space, their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. The remaining ships were huddled together, trying to use the planet's atmosphere as cover. "Tactical report," Lee ordered. Tactical Officer Bayek studied his displays with professional calm. 3 Korthak heavy cruisers, military grade, 1 destroyer with enhanced weapons. "They outgun us 4-1, Captain." "Good thing we don't fight." "Fair," Lee replied. "Park, I need everything the engines can give us." From deep in the ship, Park's voice crackled over the intercom. "You'll have it, sir. Just don't blame me if something explodes." The lead Korthak ship was a sleek Predator, all curves and elegant weapon placements. Its captain probably expected the human vessel to maintain a respectful distance and attempt negotiations. Instead, the Defiance accelerated directly toward them like a battering ram. "They're firing," Beck reported. The first volley of enemy fire scattered across the Defiance's hull like rain on a roof. The mismatched armor plating, designed to withstand mining explosions and asteroid impacts, absorbed energy that should have crippled any normal warship. "Minor damage to outer hull," came Park's voice. "Nothing we can't handle." The Korthak captain must have been confused. His perfectly calibrated weapons, designed to slice through standard military armor, were barely scratching the human ship's industrial-grade plating. The Defiance's return fire was devastating. The railguns, mounted on those awkward-looking arms that stuck out from the main hull, fired in a pattern that confused every targeting computer in the Korthak fleet. The shots came from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Their shields are down, Beck reported with satisfaction. "First cruiser is venting atmosphere." The human ship fought like a street brawler in a formal duel, while the Korthak ships tried to maintain proper formation and follow standard tactics. The Defiance twisted and turned through space, like it was ignoring the laws of physics. "How are we maneuvering like this?" Yoon asked, watching their impossible flight path on his displays. "Unbalanced weight distribution," Lee replied. "Every alien ship moves predictably because they're perfectly balanced. We move like a drunk elephant, and their computers can't figure out where we're going next." Within an hour, 2 Korthak ships were drifting hulks, and the survivors were fleeing into hyperspace. The human colony ships were safe, and word was already spreading through the galaxy's underworld. The humans had built something dangerous. The trap was set in the Vega asteroid field, where smugglers and pirates had been hiding for generations. Captain Lee should have been suspicious when their routine patrol route took them through such a perfect ambush site, but by the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. "Captain, we've got contacts," Navigator Yoon announced, his voice tight with worry. Lots of contacts. The tactical display lit up like a Christmas tree. Red dots appeared from behind asteroids, dropping out of hyperspace, emerging from the shadow of the system's dead moon. 15 ships total, ranging from heavy cruisers to fast attack vessels. "Well," Lee said, settling back in his command chair, "looks like we're famous." The lead enemy ship opened a communication channel. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a hegemony crime boss, his scales scarred from decades of illegal activities. Behind him, Lee could see the bridge of a military-grade battle cruiser. "Human vessel," the crime boss said, his translator giving his words a cold mechanical tone. "You have caused considerable trouble for certain business interests. This ends today." Lee studied the tactical display. The enemy had positioned themselves perfectly, cutting off every escape route. They had overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority. By every rule of space combat, the Defiance was already dead. "Surrender now," the crime boss continued, "and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will take our time." Lee muted the communication channel and turned to his crew. "Gentlemen and ladies, they brought enough ships to fight a proper naval battle. Too bad we never learned proper tactics." Tactical Officer Bayek was already running calculations. "Captain, they've got us surrounded, 15-1 odds. Even if we take out half of them, the rest will finish us." "Then we better make sure we take out more than half," Lee replied. He opened the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to show these criminals why you don't corner a wounded animal. Park, I need miracles from those engines." "You'll get them, sir," came Park's voice from engineering. "Just tell me where you want to go and I'll get us there." Lee unmuted the communication channel. "Criminal vessel, this is Captain Lee of the HSS Defiance. Here's our counteroffer. He nodded to Beck, who fired every weapon they had directly at the lead ship. The crime boss's expression changed from smug confidence to shock as railgun slugs punched through his shields like paper. His transmission cut off as his ship's bridge exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. "All ships, open fire!" came the panicked voice of the second-in-command. What followed was chaos. The enemy had expected to overwhelm a single ship with coordinated firepower. Instead, they found themselves fighting something that moved like no ship they'd ever encountered. The Defiance twisted through the asteroid field like a mechanical snake, using the floating rocks as cover and weapons. When enemy fire came too close, Lee would order the ship behind an asteroid. When they tried to follow, Park would fire. The engines at full burn, launching them into an impossible maneuver that left alien targeting computers spinning. "They can't get a weapons lock," Beck reported with amazement. "Our flight pattern is too random for their systems to track." "That's because we're not following any pattern," Yoon replied, his hands dancing over the navigation controls. "I'm flying by instinct and prayer." The human ship absorbed damage that should have destroyed it 10 times over. Hull breaches sealed themselves with emergency patches. Damaged systems rerouted through backup connections. When the port engines failed, Park switched to the starboard engines without missing a beat. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the surviving enemy ships. "How are they still fighting?" The answer was simple. The Defiance had been built by people who expected everything to go wrong and had planned accordingly. The battle had been raging for 3 hours, and the Defiance was bleeding atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as Captain Lee gripped his command chair, watching the tactical display count down their remaining enemies. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Damage Control Officer Young reported over the intercom, his voice strained from smoke inhalation. "Sealing now with emergency patches. Fire in the port engine room," another voice called out. "Suppression systems are offline. We're fighting it manually." Lee could hear the controlled chaos throughout his ship. Crew members were running through corridors with fire extinguishers and welding torches, patching holes and rerouting power cables. This wasn't how alien ships fought. When their systems failed, everything shut down cleanly and safely. The Defiance just kept fighting dirty. "Status report," Lee called out. 7 enemy ships destroyed, Tactical Officer Bayek announced. 3 more heavily damaged and retreating. That leaves 5 still in the fight. "And us?" Lee asked. Navigator Yoon laughed despite their situation. "According to these readings, we should have been destroyed an hour ago, but Parks kept us moving somehow." From deep in the ship, Chief Engineer Parks' voice crackled through the damaged intercom system. "Captain, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I can give you one more full-power maneuver. The bad news is it might blow up the entire ship." "Do it," Lee ordered without hesitation. The Defiance suddenly rocketed forward at impossible speed, diving between 2 massive asteroids that were slowly spinning around each other. The enemy ships followed, thinking they finally had the human vessel trapped in a dead end. They had no idea what Park had been planning. "Now!" Lee shouted. Park triggered the overloaded engine core, not for propulsion, but as a directed energy weapon. The explosion tore through the asteroid field like a miniature star, turning floating rocks into high-speed projectiles. The 2 enemy ships closest to the blast were crushed instantly by chunks of rock moving faster than bullets. The Defiance rode the shockwave like a surfer on a tsunami, its mismatched hull absorbing impacts that would have shattered any properly designed vessel. When the chaos cleared, only 2 enemy ships remained, and they were already turning to flee. "Let them go," Lee ordered as Beck reached for the weapons controls. "They'll spread the word about what happened here." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of damage control teams working throughout the ship. Through the viewports, they could see the graveyard they'd created. Chunks of alien warships drifted among the asteroids, testament to what happened when criminals tried to corner a human crew. "Sir," Communications Officer Shin said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from Galactic Council Command. They want to know our status." Lee looked around his battered bridge. Half his crew was injured. His ship was held together with emergency patches and prayers, and they'd just violated about 50 different laws of space warfare. But they were alive and their enemies were not. "Tell them we're operational," he said. "Damaged but operational." "Should I mention the 15 enemy ships?" Shin asked. "Let's call it a successful patrol," Lee replied. "No need to get into specifics." As the Defiance limped away from the asteroid field, trailing debris and atmosphere, news of the battle was already spreading through the galaxy's criminal networks. The human scrap ship had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just build ships differently, they fought differently too. And when someone tried to hunt them, they discovered that humans had been apex predators long before they reached the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. The massive chamber that usually hosted routine trade disputes and diplomatic ceremonies was packed with representatives from every major species. The air hummed with nervous energy as translators worked overtime to keep up with the rapid-fire conversations happening in dozens of languages. Ambassador Kim walked into the chamber with his head held high, despite knowing that every alien eye was watching his every move. The whispers followed him as he took his seat in the human delegation section. "That's him," he heard someone say. "The human ambassador, whose species built the impossible ship." The mediator, an ancient being whose species had been running council sessions for thousands of years, called for order with a voice that carried across the vast chamber. "We are here to discuss the recent actions of the human vessel designated Defiance," the mediator announced. "In the past 6 months, this single ship has engaged and defeated forces that should have been insurmountable." The Vorthak military advisor stood up, his forearms trembling with barely contained emotion. "Honored mediator, the humans have created something that operates outside all known parameters of space combat. Their vessel absorbed damage that should have destroyed it multiple times over, yet continued fighting." "The Syndicate fleet was eliminated," added the hegemony representative, his scales shifting to the pale color that indicated fear among his species. 15 ships against 1. This should not have been possible. Kim listened as species after species reported similar encounters. Pirates who had fled in terror after engaging human vessels, criminal organizations that were restructuring their entire operations to avoid human space, military analysts who were throwing out centuries of established combat doctrine. "The humans fight like barbarians," complained the Zephyrian delegate. "No proper formations, no adherence to established tactical principles. They turn space combat into a brawl." "And they're winning," the mediator observed quietly. The chamber fell silent at those words. For all their complaints about human methods, the results spoke for themselves. In every engagement, human vessels had emerged victorious against superior numbers and firepower. The mediator turned to Kim. "Ambassador, the Council has prepared an offer for your species. We will provide humanity with a full fleet of modern warships. State-of-the-art vessels designed by our finest engineers, equipped with the latest technology." Kim stood up slowly, looking around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. Fear. That's what he saw in their eyes. They were afraid of what humans could build with proper materials. "Honored mediator," Kim said, his voice carrying clearly through the chambers. "Acoustics. We appreciate the generous offer. However, humanity will respectfully decline." The chamber erupted in shocked chittering and clicking. Several representatives jumped to their feet, demanding explanations. "We prefer to build our own ships," Kim continued calmly. "Our engineers are already working on the next design. We call it the Revenge class." The fear in the chamber was almost tangible now. If humans could build something like the Defiance from scrap metal and outdated components, what could they create with purpose-built materials? "When will these new ships be ready?" the mediator asked. "The first hull should be launched within the year," Kim replied. "We're planning to build 12 initially." Back on Earth, Chief Engineer Park stood in a construction bay that dwarfed the one where they'd built the Defiance. This time, instead of alien scrap, they had the best materials human industry could provide. Advanced alloys, cutting-edge, power systems and weapons designed specifically for the human way of fighting. "All right, everyone," she called out to her expanded team of engineers and technicians. "Last time we proved humans could build a warship from garbage. This time, let's show them what we can do when we're actually trying." The sound of construction began again, echoing through the shipyard like the heartbeat of human ambition. These who... Galaxy had given them scrap and expected them to fail. Instead, they'd built something that changed the rules of warfare itself. Now they were going to build something that would make the Defiance look like a practice run.